This presentation. Just thankful for that. I want to thank Melody for my introduction. I thank you very much. It's such an honor for me to be here today. I thank the Colony American Legion Post 21 for inviting me to stand up here and speak to you today. As a Navy veteran, I was born into a family of Navy people. My dad was a Navy veteran. He joined the Navy right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and went on to serve the Navy for 26 years in World War II, the Korean War, and during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I also had two uncles that joined the United States Army. One of my uncles came back from Europe with a Purple Heart. My other uncle did not come back. He was killed in a battle fighting the Germans in Italy. So today, though, instead of talking about Commander Joe Caldwell or talking about the battles that we've had, I do want to honor those men and women that have given the ultimate sacrifice. But what I'd like to do today is give you a little bit of history about Memorial Day and tell you where this day has come from. So a lot of people believe that Memorial Day started back in World War I or World War II. Well, Memorial Day actually goes back to the Civil War. The Civil War claimed more lives than any other conflict in U.S. history, requiring the establishment of the first national cemetery. There were over 600,000 troops killed on both sides during the Civil War. In 1864, a group of three ladies from Boalsburg, Pennsylvania, went to mourn their loved ones. Well, of course, it was in May, and there were flowers in their gardens. So they picked the flowers and they took those to the cemetery. And they laid these flowers on the graves of the Civil War soldiers. The city of Boalsburg, seeing that the ladies had laid these flowers, vowed that the next year, in 1865, that they as a city would go out and do the same, which they did. The next year, in the South, in 1866, the southern states started doing the exact same thing, putting flowers on the graves of the Confederate soldiers. They would go to the cemeteries, honor them. At one of the cemeteries, the ladies noticed that the Union soldier graves were without flowers and went on to lay flowers at both not only the Confederate graves, but also the Union graves. In 1868, a Major General by the name of John Logan, the National Commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, established May 30th as Decoration Day. You heard Melody mention that a minute ago. That year, ceremonies were held at Arlington National Cemetery to decorate 20,000 graves of Union and Confederate soldiers. Hence the name Decoration Day was given for what we call today Memorial Day. Of course, when you have something like that, everybody wants to take, I'm the guy that established that. Well, there were nearly 25 communities throughout the northern states that declared that they were the birthplace of Decoration Day. Of course, the people of Boalsburg, PA stated that their ladies had decorated the graves back in 1864. That was 2 years before General Logan designated that Decoration Day in May of 1866. However, in 1966, 100 years after the declaration of Decoration Day, Congress and President Lyndon B. Johnson declared Waterloo, New York, as the birthplace of Memorial Day. Everybody would say, well, why Waterloo? Well, Waterloo was picked because of their formal ceremony on May the 5th of 1866. Their businesses were all closed and their flags were flown at half-staff by the entire city of Waterloo. Other communities were overlooked because their ceremonies were informal and not a community-wide effort. New York was also the very first state to officially recognize Decoration Day in 1871. During the 19th century, May 30th was a day celebrated throughout the nation as Decoration/Memorial Day. The preferred name for the holiday gradually changed from Decoration Day to Memorial Day. which was first used in 1882. It did not become the official name by federal law until 1967. It wasn't until after World War I that the day was expanded to honor those that had died in all American wars. At first, it was basically the South recognizing the Confederate soldiers and the North recognizing their Union soldiers. But after World War I, Memorial/Decoration Day became the main honorable day. In 1971, Memorial Day was declared a national holiday by the National Holiday Act passed by Congress. It was then placed on the last Monday of May so that government employees would have a 3-day weekend. By the way, in 1966, Congress designated the month of May as the National Military Appreciation Month. May has the most days set aside for celebrating and commemorating our military achievements. These days are VE Day, which stands for Victory in Europe, Loyalty Day, Armed Forces Day and Armed Forces Week, Military Spouse Appreciation Day, and of course, Memorial Day. Over the past 150 years since the end of the Civil War, the United States has been engaged in numerous battles and wars. Wikipedia, which is one of the places I went to pull some information, lists 54 different wars, conflicts, crises, affairs, and campaigns the United States military has been involved in since the Civil War. And there might be a few secret wars out there that they don't even know about. When we think of the largest campaigns, we think of World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq, those wars as our big ones. But when it comes to combat deaths in major wars, the Civil War still has the largest number of casualties, with over that 600,000 combat deaths. This number surpasses the 4 top wars, which were World War II, which had over 400,000 deaths, World War I, Vietnam, and Korea. Since the largest battles of the United States have been involved and incurred overseas, we have a large number of combat troops that are buried in foreign countries. We see that on TV quite a bit now. These countries are France, with 11 dedicated cemeteries for American troops, Belgium with 3, England with 2, and the following countries have at least 1 dedicated cemetery for United States troops. That would be Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, the Philippines, and here's one you may not know, Mexico. Don't forget about the Mexican-American War back in 1846 to 1848. Another tradition of Memorial Day has been the selling of red poppies. I noticed our folks over here this morning handing out the red poppies. I remember as a child, back when I was a child, it was a long time ago, but the ladies of the American Legion Auxiliary, the VFW Auxiliary, standing on the corner selling the poppies, and some of the old World War I, World War II vets selling those poppies. We don't see that a whole lot today. I really appreciate these people being here today. But this red plant has come to symbolize Memorial Day. The poppy story begins on the battlefield in Belgium during World War I. The fields were torn up by explosions, trenching, and in the final part, the grave sites were dug in some of these fields. These actions caused the poppy plant seeds to germinate, and that May, red flowers covered the entire battlefield. After the war, an American woman by the name of Monia Michel pursued the United States government to make the red poppy a symbol of the loss of our soldiers during World War I. Her main reason for the pursuit of the poppy symbol was to sell them to raise funds or to help returning soldiers dealing with mental and physical problems. The money from the sale would also help the families of the soldiers that had been killed during the war, and to also honor their memory. In 1920, the American Legion adopted what is now called the Memorial Poppy as a symbol of its Memorial Day. The poppy also became a symbol of World War I in Europe. France joined in the sale of poppies to help support the children that were orphaned after the war. want to break out just a little bit here. I'm a Cold War person. I went in into the Navy during Vietnam, but most of my time was served during the Cold War. I basically look at the Cold War from about 1976 up until 1990. 76 being the end of Vietnam, and the 90 looking at where we are in Iraq and Afghanistan. But we forget about those soldiers that have gone and paid the ultimate price in places such as the invasion of Grenada. We went in there to liberate our students. The invasion of Panama, General Noriega, you remember him, and the drugs. Beirut, Lebanon, the Marines remember that. The barracks was bombed there. We lost several hundred Marines. Libya with Omar Gaddafi. I flew in some of those particular raids against him. But these men, these were not declared wars. These were just little skirmishes out there. But we had men and women that were killed during those time frames. And today we want to honor them as well as the people that we honor for their bravery back in World War I, II, and so on. Also, a lot of people don't understand the training that goes on in the military. Myself, flying from the deck of an aircraft carrier on 7 different cruises, it's a very dangerous place to be. And it's hard to make a cruise without losing somebody. But those men and women that we have lost there should be honored as well today, so I don't want you to forget that. Memorial Day is not to be confused with Veterans or Armed Forces Day. Veterans Day is to basically acknowledge our men and women who have served our country. Armed Forces Day is to recognize our men and women that are currently serving in the armed forces or those that have served. But Memorial Day is to be the day that has been set aside to honor our men and women that have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country. In closing, I would ask you to remember another part of Memorial Day that may be overlooked. It is the national moment of remembrance. This moment takes place throughout our country at exactly 3 p.m. local time on Memorial Day. The National Moment of Remembrance Act of December 2000 established this moment tribute. It stems from the playing of taps on Memorial Day in 1997. Taps was played at 3 p.m. local on radio and television stations throughout the nation. As we think about these men and women that have given us the ultimate sacrifice, my last parting thought for you this morning would be that we take this time this afternoon at 3 p.m., that moment, and we pray for these men and women that have given up their lives. Again, I want to thank the American Legion Post 21 for inviting me to be here today and for letting me talk to you today.